Our goal is always to share the facts about COVID-19, and that means consulting doctors and scientists about what we should be doing to keep ourselves and our loved ones safe. And since the start of this pandemic, we've seen some of that advice change. That can be very frustrating for a lot of people. 9 Health expert Dr. Payal Kohli joins me now to help us understand why some of this guidance has changed over the last few months. First of all, Dr. Kohli, thanks so much for joining us. Let's start with...
Hi, Jenny.
Hello. Let's start with masks. At first, we were told not to wear them, and now a lot of states like Colorado are mandating masks. So walk us through what's changed on the mask front.
Look, Jenny, this was a brand new virus that we were dealing with. There was no course in medical school about coronavirus. There was no course, in fact, about how to deal with a pandemic. So doctors were really learning as we go about this virus. And in the beginning, we assumed that the virus was a respiratory virus, much like the flu virus, and that it spread in the same fashion in the sense that those people who were spreading it were the ones that were having symptoms. And with that knowledge, it made sense for everyone to not necessarily wear a mask. It wasn't until the scientific information that came in later that told us that a good percentage of people that are spreading the virus are asymptomatic, and that this virus could have airborne transmission, both facts that we didn't know at the beginning of the pandemic that really made us change our guidance. So the doctors were really following the scientific data, and as the scientific data changed, our advice changed accordingly.
Okay. Now, how about hydroxychloroquine? Months ago, we heard from Dr. Fauci this could be a possible treatment. Now we're hearing scientists say there's no evidence to support it. So what have we learned about that?
Yeah, that's another good example of how the science changes. So let's talk about this. Doctors, as you know, really worship at the altar of evidence-based medicine, and we practice all of our guidelines based on what the evidence shows. So initially, we were very interested in this as a potential treatment because it worked very well in the lab using cells and cell culture models. There was also a small study from China that told us that it could have potential as a treatment in humans, but there was, of course, a lot of biases with that study. It was very small and it was unblinded, so it may have been subjected to bias. So preliminary data seemed to suggest benefit, which is why the FDA issued emergency use authorization for this medication. After that happened, it started going into larger clinical trials. Really more robust evidence came in from these randomized trials, which are the best type of evidence. And then we started to see that it has no efficacy in preventing or treating coronavirus, and it may instead have harm. So because of that, the FDA then backtracked, removed the emergency use authorization, and that's why the doctors are now discouraging its use. So really, as the science kind of started to flow in and the information came in, that's what informed our stance.
Sure. Okay. And then the final one I have for you is, in the beginning, we get a lot of questions about COVID-19, and we're focusing on this, but maybe not paying as much attention or any attention to flu deaths. Early on, CDC said the flu could be worse than COVID-19. Now we rarely talk about the flu. So help us make sense of COVID-19 and flu in that conversation.
Yeah, another great question. In fact, I myself had said back in February that the flu is a bigger deal. And the reason was because back then it was. Americans were dying from the flu. COVID-19 wasn't here. It was in China and it was in Europe. And we weren't dying from COVID-19. But since then, it got on a plane. It came to the United States. We started having community spread. And now here in July, we're not dying from the flu. There's hardly any flu activity. We're dying from COVID-19 instead. So now we're talking about that. And the reason I think this is a great question is because come fall, things will change again. Scientists, experts, and doctors will start talking about the flu again and flu-related deaths because that flu activity is going to start to go up. So I don't want people to think this is us backtracking, but instead, as the situation changes, obviously, what we focus on and what we discuss, what causes mortality changes.
All right. Dr. Payal Kohli helping us walk through some of the shifting guidance as we've learned more, right? Because the whole thing here is we're just learning as we all kind of work through this pandemic. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll be right back.